Yo, good morning after two,
Good
three,
morning, after good
4 weeks.
afternoon, PM. Hello, Dr. Bolden.
Hello, Dr. Sarita A. Stevens. Did you see that I changed your
I am
moniker?
very impressed that
I
you
am too,
that you
because
legitimized
I
me.
should have changed mine. Isn't that something? Anyway, um, I've gotten a lot of questions about your research topics, so I just want you to go right into one, you're a doctor. You have a PhD in education. You're not a doctorate of. You don't have an EDD. You're
No, I
not
have
a doctor
a
of education.
right
You
of
have a PhD in education. Or
yes.
what is
It's
what is it?
the philosophy of education. Yes, so it's
Okay.
all of the philosophies and best practices that make education work. Which is going to
So
be important in this national effort to make education more of a choice option.
talk
Where
to me
where
about it. What do you mean
well,
education is a choice option?
where education was initially managed and developed through government, like through non-for-profit. It's now going to be developed through for-profit agencies and efforts, which means now that education would be more privatized than ever.
So what happens to the people who can't go to a privatized institution?
The public education, traditional public education now is in a situation where there's no time to whine about it. There's only time to develop the best educational program that you can manage or that you can develop. And that means attracting the proper talent, attracting people with the knowledge, attracting people that knows how to put systems together to first provide solid curriculums for urban and inner city districts, and then facilitate those curriculums and opportunities and scale them up to post secondary. And post secondary could be a college degree or a certificate of some kind of specialization. So, we still have a lot of work to do in the traditional public school setting in terms of making sure that we have the best programs in the community. Because now you have a choice for charter, you have a choice to get a voucher to go to a private school. In Indiana, I'm in the state of Indiana. Indiana is very big on that. So what do we do in traditional? We can't, complain about it anymore. We just have to, square our shoulders and compete.
Now, with the most recent change in leadership of the country, and now I believe Linda McMahon is over education.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't even know how that fits.
Well, I mean, the thing is, so you can you can reasonably surmise that they're going to scale out choice. So parents will have a choice on where to send their kids. And when you send your child to that school, they get what's called the average daily membership. So they get the check for the child. In Indiana, it's roughly about 7,500, about 11,000 if there's a special education child or an IEP, an individual educational plan for the child. So, and that doesn't, it also makes you eligible for federal grants depending on the demographics, of your school and the academic needs of your school. Say, for example, COVID severely impacted literacy and our children's literacy levels. And basically because, you weren't face to face where you could see the little interruptions and fill in the gaps and little interruptions. And so that time, divided us from that. And so what we're seeing is not only are we seeing a lag in behavioral development, we're seeing a lag in
Academic.
in academics and mainly literacy.
Now,
The
is that lag in education? Is that third through sixth grade, like where you're learning how to read, or are you
Oh,
talking
yeah.
up to
So
high school?
it's in every grade level, but the grade level that we're most concerned is that second and third grade. So
Okay.
anything from K to 3, you're learning to read. After that, you should be reading to learn. So, like we discussed in the previous
I know
show,
that. I know that.
so, yes, so there are even laws now that if the student cannot pass an exam, an assessment, and in Indiana it's the I-read, then they have to be retained another year in third grade. So you interrupt and I don't want to say cognitive because it's not really cognitive because they can learn if they get the proper program in front of them. It's just an academic curriculum interruption. And so you have to, double back. A lot of people are concerned about that because um, in a lot of urban spaces, you would have to retain a large number of students. So what you do is you extend academic opportunities. So you take them um, through after school programs, during the day, you schedule in intervention programs for them so they can get um, more practice in the science of reading. And they have actually scripted it for educators and teachers so that it's easier to teach. They actually have a scripted way that you do it. And of course, they are textbook companies they've developed scripts. And so there are products out there. The state of Indiana grabbed it by the horns and introduced like training for the science of reading and um, really focused on phonetics. I'm trying to think of the five, and it's just blew right out of my head. Comprehension, things like that that we know that the kids are missing.
Now, is
And
there a
so
chance?
we just talked about a lot too. I
Yeah,
don't,
but particularly, is there a chance of public school going away?
absolutely, absolutely.
Really?
Yes, and oh God, on my shelf over here, I got a book that I read 10 years ago. Uh, that talked about that argument. That talked about the argument of traditional public schools being phased out.
Is
And
that is it? I know it's possible. Is it probable? Is that a
so
goal
it no,
of?
it's going to be a while before that happens
Okay.
because in like suburban settings, you would have a difficult time convincing a parent to go with a private company, when your educational system is working and it's turning out the scores and it's matching the matrix that the state or the federal government has set up for you to achieve. And so if you're already achieving, why would you do that?
Mhm.
And generally, what choice means in suburban areas is there may be a private school that's close that you would apply for the voucher and then pay whatever supplement it is for your child to go to that school. And the school would have to accept them. So the private school will have to accept them through the voucher program.
How do
So, okay,
poor
so
people? Okay, go ahead. Go
yeah,
ahead.
either they're great at something, like
Oh,
in a lot of cases,
like
they'll be mad
visual and
at me for
performing arts
saying this.
schools.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Or they're great athletes. See, they'll be mad at me for saying it, but that's true. That is how, a student will have some kind of exception.
Oh,
They'll be able to do something very well that would help forward the goal of the school.
but what happens to the poor people? If public education is not there, I mean, the greatest number of our population are
You
poor
will
people.
still have education there. It'll just be managed by a private company. And
Mm.
so, in most private companies, they initially the movement was get rid of the union. The union is making it difficult for us to come in and and show them how to teach these children. And so that's a concern because when you privatize education, you got to start from square one when it comes to collective bargaining and things like that. So all of that would change. And traditionally, it's going to not traditionally, but the easiest target would be urban
Okay.
districts, indigenous districts, impoverished districts.
Now, that would mean the company would get money from the government as opposed to people having to pay tuition.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. So the ADM, the
Okay.
company would collect the ADM, the average daily membership. So the company would collect the money for the students, and then they would manage how that money is being spent. And they would manage everything else too. They would manage the curriculum, they would manage the day-to-day operations, they would manage the facility, they would manage everything.
So if they're
And
still spending the money, why make the changes?
well, because it's an entrepreneurial opportunity. It's, people who, really feel like I can do education better. I want a
Oh,
shot at this. They, this goes back, charter goes back, I don't know if it's 20 years old yet, but I think it is. Charter has been in the making for a long time.
it how much sincerity is in it? How much sincerity is I think I can do education better? Or is it basically like the private prisons were in the 80s and 90s? Like, yo, we get all these people in here, we get so much money per person, and we just rinse, wash, and repeat. Is it truly a sincere movement toward improving education?
Some people say that it is. Now, I did get the opportunity to work in charter as a school leader, and I call myself fortunate when it comes to that because as an educational leader and a learned person in educational systems, I was able to evaluate, and so what I did find is that you can be a little bit harder on a teacher when there's no organized union. You can say, and you can fire people. Like they fire leaders. Like, if they're not dancing to the beat of the drum like they want to at that time, regardless of the demographics you're working with, you are fired. They do implement the right to work laws and they do use those. They also have legislation that allows them to do things differently than traditional public school, which gives them an advantage. Like they don't have to follow the employment laws that are designed for traditional. And also, they don't have to. What I saw is that if a student was too much trouble, you just put them out. Because the public school had to accept them, regardless of whether or not ADM had already been distributed,
Ah,
regardless of whether or not the other school has already gotten the money. You have to wait
so
to the whole next cycle
I could keep them long enough
until
to get the
after count
ADM.
and then get the money and then spew them out.
Would you
And
ever
so it's
start a
those little
school?
things that would make it seem insincere. And
Would you
so,
ever start a school? Would you go back old school? You get
and
your
start a
Mary
school,
McLeod Bethune?
yeah, but I would want to do a school because I understand how critical developmental stages are. And because I really do understand that, I would want to start it from K, from K to two, and then go from there. Because there's a whole mentality that goes um, with giving a child the confidence to be able to learn whatever they could imagine. And it also comes with an education of a parent when they've had a struggle, but you want to bring up the next generation. So in starting a school, I would want to start with the littles and build a very strong parent coalition because parents don't want to feel bad about having some gaps on how to raise kids. Parents really need support and
Right.
really need advice and really need a encouragement. Like, listen, you're working two jobs, but you're coming home and you're making sure that Sam has peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. That's great. That's great. But here's a program over here that will allow us to put all of the food groups in his backpack All we need for you to do is help us to facilitate that and monitor that. So it's true products and true resources, not products,
Mhm.
that you can connect people that are struggling to without assigning any kind of shame or, making them, feel bad about what the current situation is, because you can help them also understand how you build that up, which takes us right into Maslow's.
All right.
Takes us
What is
right.
Maslow's? Who is Maslow's? What are we talking about?
Okay, in 1943, Abraham Maslow, and I would say Dr. Abraham Maslow, he introduced the psychological um, hierarchy of needs, or human hierarchy of needs, and actually a theory that um, describes human motivation and human encouragement step by step.
Hmm.
Okay, so there are, several levels to the hierarchy of needs, and I wish that I don't know how to pull this up on the screen. Um, oh gosh, I don't know how to pull this up on the screen. Let me see if I could share my screen.
Yes.
Okay. Uh,
Try document.
okay,
Pick-
share.
There you go.
Uh, okay, so I don't see. Oh, it's open. Hold on, I'm gonna see if I can get it to do it. Okay. I may not be able to get it to do it. So what I'm gonna do is
Uh-oh.
because I would have to modify my settings.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
I think what I'm gonna do is text it to you
okay.
or to email it to you, and if you can um open it and put it up, that would be great. But I can talk about it before you do it. I'm gonna send it to you right now. All
Okay.
right.
Which you sending it to AOL or
Um,
university or where?
AOL. Okay.
Uh,
Okay, I did send it to you.
Let me look.
Got it?
AOL. Let me see. But go ahead and be giving me the background on it. You said 1947,
1943.
three.
So,
Okay.
and his name is Abraham Maslow, and he's one of the educational philosophers, the modern educational philosophers, um, that we um, that we pay attention to, because he created a framework where you can really like figure out what actually affects um, the human needs. So for example, the basic needs, the physiological needs, every human needs water, shelter, warmth, a place to rest. Those are the physiological needs. So if a child has disruption in their physiological need, and we know that that is true because of, hunger and poverty and just a quick story about, we had a young lady in the Gary schools that ended up being, trying to think of that scholar. I think she ended up being a Lilly scholar, but it was a scholar that she got all of her education paid up until her PhD, but she
Mhm.
didn't have
Oh,
any
wow.
lights in her house. They didn't have lights in her house. It was the dead of winter. They did not have lights. So she had to, like, the neighbor ended up helping out, giving them an extension cord. And so if you can imagine a child having that level of brilliance, but they had to survive in a house where there was no power. One of the saddest things that I saw in South Bend was, a house fire starting because they didn't have adequate heat in the house. And all five of those children perished in that
Oh,
house
wow.
from eighth grade down to preschool. They all died in that house, and that is a basic need. So they were trapped. So what do we do as educators? Because we know in the initial developmental stages of a child, their environment is actually describing to them their worth and
Mhm.
describing to them what you are and who you are, which is which is what creates the challenge in urban impoverished areas because you have to fill in some of those gaps. Now, we've gotten really good in filling in the hunger gap. We've gotten
Now,
good at
so I'm assuming hunger would be one of the first
Yes, it's
of
it's the
Maslow's hierarchy.
physiological need. It's at the very basic level of Maslow, the very basic level. So
Okay.
so yes, that would definitely be one of the things that you do, as an educator, because that's one of the things that you can do, right? You can provide. The government does provide free lunch and things like that.
Mhm.
Okay, I think I'm seeing, what am I seeing? I'm seeing a design, but
Wait a minute.
the government does provide this great, free lunch program, and then the summer program, summer feeding, things that make sure that our children, that they're eating. Um, so, that's one of the things that you do to, make sure that a child is ready. You
I'm
know,
assuming
that,
you can see me navigating to AOL to open up your deal. Can you see
yeah,
that? Okay,
yes, yeah,
gotcha. I'm just checking.
yes, I can. Um, so um one of the things so the basic needs, if someone is experiencing homelessness, there is a federal fund called McKinney-Vento, and what McKinney-Vento does is it actually helps you provide services to homeless individuals, so or people that are experiencing homelessness. Like, you don't have to change their school. You can provide busing for them to get to places. You also can provide some, like, clothing, clothing closets. There are agencies that, as a district or as a school, you would be affiliated with. And you can, kind of speed dial that parent into those services. And those services vary.
Do you have
You
to
know,
have do you have to have a lot of people to get that, or is it a individualized thing? Does it have to be like, oh, a lot of people are impoverished, so now I can get busing, or this
no,
particular?
no, McKinney-Vento is just based on whether or not you are homeless. And if you're staying with your cousin or sister or brother, you're doubling up and you are considered homeless if you're staying with them temporarily.
Okay.
And so the idea is not to disrupt the child's educational flow, not to take them out of the school or anything. You make sure that you have busing for them to get to school. And sometimes, at that level, you see quite a bit, especially in the younger ages. You see quite a bit of behavior, like negative behavior. And so you have to be really careful. Um, I'll give you an example. We had some students that were very disruptive on the bus, and some of them, were a little violent. So you had to make sure, first of all, that you didn't just forgive and ignore the behavior. You have to
Right.
put something in place where you help them to own the behavior so they can correct it. And sometimes that takes that direct talk to
Mhm.
everybody. you know um but then you still try to figure out a way to provide them services so they can get to school, because they're in a situation already, and you don't want to eliminate their ability to get food, to get knowledge, to be in a structured environment. You don't want to do that. You want to keep having them in that environment so they can develop. Now, if the
Okay.
behavior, Hmm.
One second, I do have one question. We're coming up on 2 minutes, so what we're going to do is I'm going to ask this question, and then you'll, after you answer that, we'll come back, and then we'll go from the bottom to the top. But I've been familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs since undergrad, but
Hmm.
breathing is now at the bottom. Has that always been there?
Yes. So, the ability to breathe, yes, because just think about it. If you were in Flint at one time, you couldn't even get clean water. So, yes.
Help me understand the breathing part. Because food I have to get, water I have to get, shelter I have to get, clothing I have to get, sleep I have to get, which
Uh,
actually, yeah, I have to have properly. But breathing, does
so,
that mean the ability?
so, so what if you're in a place that's mold infested? That it's not a safe breathing environment.
This has always been part of the basic ones because I thought it was food,
Yes.
water, shelter,
Yes,
and
yes. You could be in a lice infested environment. Poverty brings things that we're like, we don't even think about it until we have interaction with children that have to deal with that every day. So we,
well,
so
wait a
sure,
minute. What we're
they
gonna
can be
do,
in. Mhm.
let's pause here and then we'll go from the bottom to the top. Okay.
All
And
right.
so we'll go out and we'll come back in.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna stay up, so you just have to just come back. All right.
Okay. So we're gonna stay with the psychological, the physiological.
I just okay.
Mhm.
I want to make sure I stop recording. Okay. No, it's still recording.